Okay, let's set the scene. Imagine this. Headingley, late June 2025. It's packed. The atmosphere is just buzzing. India versus England, a huge test match. And India, well, they're batting out of their skins. First innings, 471. Second innings, 364. I mean, 5 centuries from 5 different Indian batsmen in one single match. Just wow. You'd think, looking at those scores, that's game, set, match, right? Victory surely sewn up, but then somehow the whole thing gets turned on its head. England are chasing 371, which is a massive ask in the 4th innings. And they get there. They win by 5 wickets. It was just a stunning result. Left everyone scratching their heads, commentators, fans, probably the players too. How? How did India lose that with those runs on the board? And that right there is what we're diving into today. It's more than just one surprising result, isn't it? It taps into this this really deep strategic question in Test cricket, especially overseas. This whole balancing act between players who do a bit of everything, the all-rounders, and those who are masters of one specific skill, as specialists. It's like a game of chess within the game itself.
Exactly. Headingley wasn't just a shock loss. It really felt like a strategic moment of truth for India. And especially now, we're talking July 2nd, 2025, the second test at Birmingham is just around the corner. So these questions about team balance, they're not just academic, they're urgent. Understanding this choice, it goes way beyond just looking at the scorecard. It's about the whole philosophy of building a test team that can win anywhere.
Okay, let's unpack that Headingley match a bit more first, because, wow, some of those individual performances were seriously impressive. You had Shubman Gill leading the side, hitting a brilliant 100. And Rishabh Pant, I mean, what can you say? First Indian keeper ever to score centuries in both innings of the test. Incredible stuff. And he passed 3,000 test runs too.
Phenomenal achievement.
Yeah. And then Bumrah, Jasprit Bumrah, took 5 wickets in the first innings. Looked devastating. So you've got these huge individual peaks. Where did the collective effort fall short?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Because while the top order batsmen were frankly magnificent, the contributions from India's main all-rounders, Ravindra, Jadeja, and Shardul Thakur, were, well, they were quite muted. Look at Jadeja's scores of 19 and 24. With the ball, 2 wickets for 107 runs. That's not the impact you expect.
Yeah.
And Thakur, similar story, 35 and 17 with the bat, and just the 1 wicket for 78 runs. Now, contrast that with England. You had someone like Ben Stokes chipping in, providing that crucial support. And then the main architects of the chase, Ben Duckett with that amazing 149, and Joe Root seeing them home, unbeaten on 53. England's players who offer multiple skills really stepped up. India's, in that particular game, didn't quite deliver across the board.
Okay, so that's maybe the first big clue, isn't it? Despite those massive individual scores, the overall team balance felt, well, it feels a bit off. Especially, like you said, in England, where the ball swings and seams around. You really need everyone firing consistently. Maybe that promise of depth from the all-rounders just wasn't quite there when it mattered most. Left the specialists with maybe too much heavy lifting.
That frames the dilemma perfectly. And look, this whole debate, all-rounders versus specialists, it's as old as the hills, really. It's not new. India, if you look back historically, often built their success on the sheer dominance of specialists. You mentioned Gavaskar, Tendulkar, Kumble pillars of the side.
Absolute legends.
Right. And even more recently, think about Pujara's grit or Ishant Sharma's relentless bowling overseas. Their specialized skills were often the bedrock, particularly in those tough away conditions.
You can see that, but then the appeal of the all-rounder is so obvious, isn't it? That versatility. Someone who can bat, bowl, is usually brilliant in the field, too. It gives the captain so many options, adds depth. Jadeja himself and Ashwin, before his retirement, have been absolutely vital for India in that role. Those lower order runs, the extra bowling option, it's hugely valuable.
Yeah.
Oh, undoubtedly. The flexibility they offer is tempting for any captain. But here's the crucial question, the one Headingley really forced us to ask. Does that very versatility sometimes become a bit of a liability? Especially when you're facing really specific, demanding conditions like swinging, seaming pitches in England. There's some thinking and maybe some data starting to back this up that all-rounders might struggle for that elite consistency in overseas tests, where one mistake with bat or ball can be fatal. Sometimes you just need someone who does that one thing, day in, day out, at the highest level. The master craftsman, not the jack of all trades.
Right, and you mentioned data, because this isn't just about gut feeling or historical trends. We can actually look at the numbers. Let's get into that. How have India's all-rounders actually performed recently in those really challenging overseas tours? We're talking South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia, the SENA countries. because I suspect the figures might tell quite a revealing story about this consistency issue you mentioned.
They do, and it's quite illuminating when you lay it out. Let's take Jadeja first. In 15 matches in Cine countries, his batting average is 28.5. Bowling average, 35.2. Now, okay, he does have 2 centuries and 50 wickets in those games, which shows he can perform. But those averages, they suggest that consistent match-defining impact isn't always there away from home.
Right, peaks, but maybe not the consistent high plateau you get from a specialist.
Potentially, yes. Then there's Shardul Thakur. 8 matches in Sana conditions. Batting average 22.3, bowling average 42.1. He's got 150, 20 wickets. Again, useful contributions, but perhaps not consistently game-changing with either bat or ball. And Washington Sundar, another promising talent. In his 3 Sana matches so far, batting average is 30.0, bowling average 38.5, 150, 5 wickets. So what these numbers seem to point towards collectively is that while these players offer valuable balance, their performance levels abroad often don't match what they produce in more familiar home conditions, especially with the ball. It underlines the strategic challenge. How much do you value that depth versus the potentially more reliable output of a specialist in conditions that really test one particular skill set? That Headingley result starts to make a bit more sense numerically.
Which brings us neatly to where India finds itself right now. There's this big generational shift happening, isn't there? We've seen some absolute giants of the game retire recently. Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Ravichandran Ashwin. That's a huge amount of experience walking away. And naturally, it opens up spots for the next generation.
Exactly. And that's brought in some exciting younger players who do offer all-round skills. We mentioned Washington Sundar. There's also Kuldeep Yadav, who provides that wrist spin option plus useful batting down the order. But it creates this sort of sandwich generation dynamic, as some people call it. Players caught between the departing legends and maybe newer, more specialized talents coming through. And that puts the team management in a really tricky spot, doesn't it? Do you back the versatile potential of these younger all-rounders, or do you look for more established specialist solidity, especially for tough away tours?
So looking ahead to Birmingham and the rest of this series, what does that mean in practical terms? Are we likely to see India maybe tweak the balance? Could they consider bringing in a specialist batsman like Abhimanyu Aswaran, known for his solid technique? Or maybe unleash a specialist bowler like Navdeep Saini for his pace? Or, as you mentioned, if the pitch looks like it might offer something for the spinners later on, perhaps Kuldeep Yadav gets a go purely for his wrist spin. This series is really becoming a fascinating test case to India's strategy.
All very plausible scenarios. And it's fascinating because despite this whole discussion and, yes, the Headingley underperformance, players like Jadeja are still incredibly valuable. You don't just discard that kind of quality in depth. It's not really an either situation, is it? It's more about finding the right blend for the specific challenge you're facing.
Sure.
Maybe Headingley required more specialist input. Maybe Birmingham will be different. The puzzle is getting that mix just right for those conditions on that day. It really highlights that sometimes being world-class at one thing can be more decisive than being pretty good at 2 or 3.
So wrapping this up, where does this leave India? It feels like they're facing a genuinely critical strategic choice, thrown into sharp relief by that Headingley result. Do they stick with the formula that prioritizes all-round depth, hoping for more consistent contributions? Or do they lean more towards specialists, particularly for these demanding overseas tests, accepting maybe a slightly longer tail or one less bowling option? This series feels like a real watershed moment for their test philosophy, and you can bet every selection call from here on will be viewed through this exact lens.
It really will. And, stepping back for a second, this whole cricketing dilemma, it kind of echoes a question we all face in different ways, doesn't it? In our careers and teams we're part of. Is it better to specialize deeply, become a true master of one thing? Or is it better to cultivate a broader skill set, be more adaptable, good at many things? Depth versus breadth. It's something worth pondering, perhaps, as you think about this deep dive. What does this focus on specialization versus versatility mean for how you approach skills, strategy, and building effective teams?
That's a great point. It really makes you think. If you were the one making the calls, if a championship or a crucial project depended on it, how would you strike that balance? Specialist mastery or versatile adaptability? It's definitely not as simple as it looks from the boundary rope.